Hi, and welcome to the Bi.4.Twi podcast. I'm your host, Ellis Golden, account owner of the Bi.4.Twi Instagram account, and I'm so glad that you decided to join me. This week, we are talking about why New Moon is a lot better than people give it credit for. It is my favorite Twilight book, not counting Midnight Sun, and my favorite Twilight movie as well. New Moon has gotten a lot of flack, and so I've brought on two very special guests to help me defend New Moon from a perspective that isn't simply my own. And so wait, and you will soon hear their opinions as well. But until then, I am going to go a little bit more in depth on my personal favorite aspects that I feel like aren't really discussed as much in our conversations. So one is definitely the cinematography. I feel like that is one of New Moon's strongest aspects for sure. The image of Bella curled up in the woods after Edward leaves, Victoria's red hair surrounded by like all these cool toned trees. Like, yes, New Moon is significantly more warm toned than Twilight. It still has a lot of cool tones. We're still in the Pacific Northwest. We're still in Forks. And, you can't warm tone the trees, these evergreen trees that are always green, right? So Victoria's red hair, and they made her have way redder hair in this movie, more similar to how it's described in the books. And it really stands out. And I think that that's a really cool contrast going on. And it doesn't even, it's not even like Cullens versus everyone thing. It's like everyone versus Victoria, because even the warm tones of like Jacob are still very like muted. They're very calming, muted, warm tones. Whereas Victoria, it's like this fiery red. Like it really stands out. But we do still have these warm tones to signify Jacob. And that comes in pretty much just in this movie. Like we get we kind of get the colors in the books. Like, oh, well, Jacob's hot and Edward's warm. But I think that what people are forgetting is a lot of the sort of iconic visuals were established in New Moon. Because in Twilight, Jacob, there's no warm tone things going on. In his costuming, sure, but it's not like the camera itself is warm tone. We barely get Jacob at all in Twilight. And so it's really just a New Moon that we start to get this visual establishment of the line drawn between the two. The camera work is no longer handheld like it is in Twilight, which makes it less personal. Like it feels less like we're in the room with these characters, but it also benefits it in that it's more detached, like Bella's emotions. I feel like it would be hard to feel kind of her depression and her detachment if we felt like we're in the room, when Bella herself doesn't even feel like she's in the room for most of New Moon. So I think that was a really smart decision. Plus, it would kind of be hard to maintain that style going into movies with a lot more action, like Eclipse and Breaking Dawn Part 1 and 2. I also felt like it was a really smart choice for them to decide to visually show Edward, because in Bella's hallucinations in the books, she only hallucinates over one book. In her hallucinations in New Moon, the book, she just hears Edward. Whereas we want to see Robert Pattinson, And so I feel like that was a very smart decision. We're going to visually show him. He's going to be like semi-transparent, show he's not really there. And I also feel like we got a lot of really cool moments because of that. Specifically when Bella's in the water and she visualizes Edward next to her. And then when Jacob pulls her out and her arm like hits where Edward was, there's like this rippling water effect where like he disappears like with the water ripples, and we wouldn't have got that. That's not in the book. There's so many moments like that that aren't in the book that are like really good. Kind of piggybacking off of that whole scene. So my favorite sequence in any Twilight movie is the Victoria chase that leads into the cliff diving scene. That's cinema, baby. It's so good. And you can find the clips on YouTube. I'll link those, and I'll link them in order so you can just watch it smoothly if you don't have a copy. It's sometimes I just watch it to like pump myself up because it's so good. And in that scene, we get the death of, well, the heart attack that leads to the death of Harry Clearwater. And that's another decision that I feel like was ultimately good, the way they decide to do that. So he dies in the movie saving Charlie by distracting Victoria. Whereas in the books, it's not seen. I mean, obviously it's not Bella's perspective, so we don't see a lot in the books. But in the movie, they decided it's this kind of heroic action, whereas in the books, it's like kind of from sexism. Because Leah transforms, she phases in front of Harry, and until that point, they didn't know that women could be wolves. And so he has a heart attack and shock after she phases, and it's like that just seems, I don't know, it seems strange to like just kind of give him that character trait and not do anything with it, not really show how it affected Leah or anything. So it just kind of seems like a weird throwaway. So I'm glad that they just discarded that and had it be this moment that makes more sense to us too, because at that point we don't even really know Leah, and so it doesn't have the impact that it should when it occurs. And so in that sequence, the music is perfect. Oh my gosh. We go from hearing damage, which is so good, to Slow Life. And just those songs are like, they just make the mood. And they're the entire scene. There's like pretty much no talking whatsoever for that entire sequence. There's like a few words said. It's almost entirely just like music. It's almost like an incredible music video. The color grading is perfect. Like I said, Victoria's hair really standing out. The warm tones contrasted with the cool tones, and the cliff diving just feeling so cold. Like you can feel that it's cold, even though there's evergreen trees, so you can't really tell what season it is. You can feel that jumping into this water is freezing. And then Victoria's hair under the water with like the bright red in the blue water. It's so good. The speed of the birds that are flying over, being slower than Victoria to show like just how fast she's going. It shows how Charlie and like the humans are dealing with the situation. Like they think that it's some sort of killer creature. I mean, not creature, you know what I mean? Like they think at first maybe it's an animal, but then it's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And it shows how the humans are trying, these small town police officers and just like concerned citizens are kind of dealing with the killings in the area. The cliff, and then, but yeah, just the whole sequence is genius. It's so good. If you haven't seen it in a while, I promise you it's better than you remember it being. So please click those links and watch it. And then kind of last thing on the cinematography, how they chose to portray the wolves. So again, keep in mind, until this movie, we did not know what the wolves looked like. We had descriptions in the books. They had to go from scratch. What can we do with the current CGI and like practical effects? Like they had to make that decision. Well, first, are we going to do computer or are we going to do practical? well, the problem with practical, even though it looks awesome, is there's obviously a lot of physical limitations as to fights and such like that. So, okay, we're going to do CGI. Luckily, we're at a time now, 2009, where CGI is like starting to get good. It's still not perfect, obviously, but it's starting to be something that can hold up, right? But then you have to decide, okay, well, how big are they going to be? And then you have to decide, obviously, they're getting creative consulting from Stephanie Meyer and Melissa Rosenberg, who does like the screenplay and stuff. Obviously, they're getting creative consultant, but it's also about, well, how does it look compared to the rest of the movie? They can be too big, but they can't be too small. They can't just look like normal wolves. You know, how emotive are we going to make them? Because you don't want to make them too cartoony, because then they're not imposing or scary. But then you also can't make them too realistic, because then they're too scary and too intimidating, and you don't get any of the personality going through. I feel like a good example of kind of not getting that line right is the 2019 The Lion King, because they made them too realistic, and you lose a lot of the character in like their eyes. Whereas I feel like New Moon balanced it perfectly, where like it's just expressive enough, where they don't look cartoony, but you still you look in their eyes and you see the emotion, you know what they're thinking. And so I feel like people do not give New Moon enough credit. That's like, they had to figure this out. They had to figure out what they wanted to do and how they were going to execute it. And on top of that, then they had to actually go and execute it. Each wolf has millions of strands of fur. And this isn't like a huge budget movie. It's like 50 million, which sounds like a lot of money. I promise you, in terms of a movie of this size, scale, cast, action, locations, CGI, that is not a lot whatsoever. Let me do a quick comparison. Okay, so I looked up. New Moon budget was 50 million, which again sounds like a lot. Promise you it's not. So I was going to look up Avengers Endgame budget, but I felt like that's not fair. This is really big cast, super big, modern day, all that. So I decided, let me look up 2012's Avengers, so closer to 2009, and way smaller cast, just like the main cast, just one setting, New York, but, you know, high levels of CGI as well, but a lot more practical effects. I mean, first Avengers, obviously a lot smaller of a production, so I thought, let me be fair, let me come up with something like that. Avengers, the first Avengers, has a $220 million budget, which is over 4 times that of the second Twilight movie. And the CGI doesn't look as good. And I know there's more of it and it's more spaced out, but I'm just saying, in New Moon, they shot in Italy, and think of all the extras and like all the shit. Y'all, I'm just saying, Chris White's killed it. I'm number 1 Chris White stan account, and I hate the hate around this movie. Another small thing is Bella's evolution of depression within the movie. As someone who struggled with depression, like clinical depression, I feel like it's so raw and genuine, and that I only wish that the first movie, like the first book, had established that Bella has had a history of depression in the past, and it's not something that just came out of like the trauma, but it's actually something that she struggled with before, and so it's really just like this has triggered a resurfacing of that. But I mean, they didn't establish that in the first movie, so what is Chris White supposed to do about that? Let me read you a quote, actually, of the infamous, there's a possibility scene, where Bella's in the chair, which is such, and we talk about this a little bit in the conversations, but like how he chose to do that is perfect. That is exactly what it felt like reading these pages for the first time. So if you don't know, in the book, Edward leaves, and then it just says on one page, October, rest of it's blank, flip to it. November, rest of it's blank, flip to it. December, rest of it's blank, flip to it. January, rest of it's blank, turn again, chapter 4, waking up. Time passes, even when it seems impossible, even when each tick of the second hand aches like the pulse of the blood behind a bruise. It passes unevenly, in strange lurches and dragging lulls, but pass it does, even for me. Okay, Stephanie, what the hell? Okay. Incredible writing from her, like so good actually. And then it's like, how do you represent that? Because they could just have Kristen Stewart read that, but it's like you don't get the emotion of like the month going by and then the next month and the next month, but nothing feels like it's real or it's actually happening. And so how they chose to do that with her sitting in the chair is just the season passes. Perfect. So good. New Moon, arguably New Moon's biggest strength, Jacob, especially book Jacob. Less so movie Jacob, but I have a point for that too. So movie Jacob is a lot less golden retriever energy than the book, but when the movie came out, Eclipse was out, we knew the trajectory for Jacob, so therefore you have to kind of set it up, because the jump, the leap from New Moon to Eclipse book-wise is extremely jarring for Jacob's personality. And not just like, oh, the wolf, the phasing, like it's very different. And so again, Melissa Rosenberg, Chris Weitz, I really feel like they're very smart, and Taylor Lautner too, shout out, in how they kind of blended the two. So Jacob is a lot sweeter. He's a lot more endearing. They kept that New Moon, boy from the book in their hearts, but he still has like these kind of more aggro moments that make how he acts in Eclipse a lot more understandable. Like the freak out at the movie and everything, which he doesn't freak out like that in the book. He's just like really chill about it. So just stuff like that I feel like was a smart way of blending the two and making it a more reasonable transition for viewers, because I will tell you, as a reader, it was confusing and jarring. But book Jacob will always have my heart. Specifically New Moon. New Moon wise, I am Team Jacob, but purely New Moon. And it has nothing to do with Edward even leaving. I just really like Jacob in New Moon. He's this sunshine golden retriever baby boy. He's perfect, and he makes New Moon. He's just like this light and all this darkness. And then finally, transitioning from that, the book. There's just something so fairy tale-like about the book, despite all the pain. It's, you might think it's funny to say it's fairy tale-like when a lot of it's just this depressive pain. But just like the opening dream of the running through Volterra with like the clock going, and it's just, you're like, what's going on? Like this prologue, like what's happening? And it feels so dreamlike. To then the actual dream of Bella in the meadow, and she thinks she sees her grandmother, but then it turns out to be her, and it's showing her deep fear of aging and Edward staying the same, to the birthday party that Alice has prepared with all the candles and all the lights going from all the way from the driveway to the house, trying to find the meadow, only to discover that in the book, it's the exact same. In the movie, it's like dead. All the grass is dead. It doesn't look the same. It doesn't feel the same. But in the book, it literally is the same. It looks the exact same as when she was there with Edward, but it doesn't feel like that at all. Then we get the introduction of the Volturi, which are like this very imposing presence. the running through Volterra to save Edward, writing emails to Alice, and just like this kind of longing, yearning feeling, learning about the pack and like this whole new world that she didn't realize coexisted. It's just effortlessly epic in a way that Eclipse and Breaking Dawn try too hard to be. And with that, I will now go into the conversations with my incredible guest. Here they are. Hey, this is Editing Ellis. I just want to give a quick apology for the sound quality of my conversation with Beth Leanne Hunter. There's nothing really I can do about it now, so I did my best. Sorry. I hope you enjoy despite the sound problems. It is a very good and fun conversation, I promise. All right. So now I'm joined by my lovely guest, Beth Leanne Hunter. I'm going to let her take it away and just say a little bit about herself.
Hi, my name is Beth. I am a avid Twilight fan since its origin, and I'm also someone who is on TikTok very often, and I post a lot of TikToks specifically about music and vinyl records, but even more specifically, typically about movie soundtracks. And my love for movie soundtracks indefinitely comes from the Twilight movies, and that has vastly affected my taste in music ever since then, and I'm a huge fan and advocate for the soundtracks.
Awesome. Yes. I checked out your TikTok. Unfortunately, I didn't know about your TikTok until you reached out. I'm not really on TikTok probably as much
Good
as I
for you.
used to be. I know I managed to avoid that addiction. Um, but I was checking them out and I thought it was just so interesting and I was like, what better topic about New Moon than the soundtrack? I mean, if we're gonna do a defense of New Moon, then it's like that is a very major portion.
I think so too. And like I always say that like people can say whatever they want about the Twilight movies and they will, but the one thing that people usually can't say is that the songs and the soundtracks are bad. Um, like the artists that kind of span the whole soundtrack is like CeeLo Green, Lupe Fiasco, Muse, and like it's so many. Oh my God, Jack White. There's so many like renowned artists that people respect that have been on the soundtracks. And so
Mhm.
even like if you're to put these soundtracks like on paper, someone can't be like,
Yeah.
that's a bad lineup. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And
Like,
I
OK
think,
Go, Paramore, like, we have all these
girl,
people. Yeah, like, I'll see a friend one of my friends recently posted that they were at, like, an OK Go concert in, like, Madison Square Garden, and I responded, I was like, "That's so cool, they're on the Twilight soundtrack."
that absolutely is how those things need to go. It's kind of like not to bring another fandom into something, but I'm also the same way where I'm like, oh my God, the song was on Glee.
Oh
And I
my
hate
gosh.
myself for it, but I'm absolutely like, yep, the song's on Glee. That's how I know it.
Oh,
Um
no,
be-
yeah, there's so many songs that, like, Glee introduced me to.
it's so sick. And you like look back, you're like, God, I hate admitting that, but that really is like what it's about. And that's also like, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that a
Mhm,
lot of people um, automatically dislike things that teenage girls gravitate towards. And
for
obviously,
sure.
Twilight had a big fan base of teenage girls, but that does not mean that it's a bad thing. And that doesn't mean
Mhm,
that it's not doing something for them. I think that there's a lot of well-renowned like people artists out there who have probably been influenced like by these movies. Olivia Rodrigo just being
mhm,
one of them, who has said like on record that she loves Twilight and the soundtracks and everything.
for
And
sure.
Alexandra Pestravas, who was the music supervisor for all of the Twilight movies, also is the music supervisor for Bridgerton, for Gossip Girl, Grey's Anatomy. So she's been in charge of like a lot of really iconic movie moments and TV moments. Yeah, and she's incredible.
Definitely. I can't remember who it was, and if I find it, I will link it in the description. I saw something recently that Stevie Nicks went back into writing music because of New Moon.
Yeah, it's nuts. I saw her. She was on. a talk show like sitting next to Taylor Lautner actually. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, I know it's the weirdest thing. It's
We
so crazy."
weird guest lineup.
I want and I wish I knew like more about what was going on that day because I want to know where they were like, these are two great people that sit next to each other. But apparently they were right because she was like, "Oh my gosh, your movies really like helped me get back into writing music. And I wrote a song about the love triangle between you three." And I'm like, ah, wow.
I know, and, like, Stevie I mean, for those of y'all that don't know, Stevie Nicks is an incredible solo artist, but also was in the band Fleetwood Mac, and, like, any iconic like, there's so many iconic songs that Stevie Nicks has written or sang or both, and
Yes.
yeah, definitely a very, very influential and incredible artist, like, one of the greats, for sure.
I think and it's really astronomical seeing like even something that people don't like that doesn't have like great reviews that it's not like nominated for awards or anything is still influencing people. And even in negative ways, one of my favorite bands, My Chemical Romance, wrote a song about how they were approached by the people of the
Mhm.
Twilight soundtrack and then said no. And then they wrote a song, Vampire Money. And even that's a song I love that I'm like, this is
Yes.
around because of the Twilight movies and
Mhm.
the Twilight soundtracks. And I have to be so grateful for that.
And then it came full circle at a concert, like, I wanna say 2021 or so, um,
Hmm.
Gerard was wearing a Twilight shirt. And
Oh
he's
my
like
God, you're kidding.
I'm not you have to look it up, like, he's come
I'm
around
looking it
and
up
he's like,
right
"Yeah,
now.
this is actually iconic, and I love this now." He said he
Oh
watched it with
my
his wife.
God.
He recently watched it with his wife and was like, "Oh, I
Oh
love
my
it."
God, with Lindsay, I could pass out. I'm going to pass out. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
You
he
see,
slowly it's come full circle, it's beautiful.
oh, I love that's what we deserve.
And then, that recent interview with Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz, where he's like Zoe Kravitz is like, "You know, I never saw the Twilight movies and stuff," and Robert Pattinson is like, hating on Twilight is, like, so 10 years ago." He's like
Yes. I love that man. He like obviously, but like
Yeah.
I love his whole him and Kristen's whole attitude towards it. Um
Mhm.
and how they're kind of, oh my God, he's wearing a freaking Team Edward shirt. I could die. This is nuts.
Oh my
Ah,
gosh.
what a world to live in.
So, we've established that the Twilight movies and soundtrack are definitely iconic, but what in particular do you think makes New Moon soundtrack, like, especially good?
Oh, what a great question. I think that there is obviously with the tone of the movie, it's very like somber, and I
Mhm.
think that it's the perfect set of songs, like Possibility, Rosalind being the main, I think, like which I'll talk about, but me being the big song from that. I think it just helps put everyone in the mood that we all get into. Sometimes just deep, vast depression, and these are just like because of what she's going through, they really encapsulated what she's feeling in these songs. So all you want to do sometimes is sit in a chair and listen to Possibility because that's how sad you are.
Mhm.
And like you know, when you're 13, you're kind of like she's being so over dramatic, and then you are older, and then you're like, you know what? I
She
could
was right.
also, yeah, I could totally sit in a chair and stare out a window right now. I would love that. Um, and there was so much like work that clearly went into this, and I appreciate that the artists, like well-renowned artists like Tom York, the lead singer of Radiohead, like discussed in an interview how he wanted to like put this really ominous feeling into the song Hearing Damage that he did, which is during the Victoria and wolves chasing scene,
Oh, yeah.
which is one of the
My
best moments
favorite scene
in
in New Moon.
it is the best scene in New Moon. Your
Yeah,
opinion is absolutely correct.
yes, and the way that it transitions to slow life in the water,
Oh,
those 2 scenes together are basically like 1 scene because it's such a seamless transition, it's like it's perfect. It's cinema,
you're
frankly.
100% right. That is cinema. What happened to movies? What
What
happened to
happened to
cinema?
movies?
Because this is what Nicole Kidman was talking about.
Mhm.
Um, but you're absolutely right. Like there's nothing. It's clear that these people who made these songs for these movies don't care that people don't like these movies. They're like, no matter what, I'm going to treat this song that I'm in charge of with respect and treat it like it's
Yes.
something I was making for my own album.
Mhm.
And that's kind of something I've seen in action where I've seen people like walk away from like watching Twilight in like a living room, and then like hearing damage will come up and they're kind of like pulled back in a little bit and like, well, now I want to know what's going on. Like, this is so fun. This is a great song. Um, so I think there's just a lot of care put into it. And
Hmm.
I think that these are artists that, kind of like I mentioned, don't care that they're making something that is intended for teenage girls, really. But they're, no, regardless of that, they're treating it with the respect that every piece of media should have.
Yeah, they're like, we're gonna treat this soundtrack like this could be an Oscar nominated movie.
Exactly, exactly. Because it really
Mhm.
feels that way. Like
Oh yeah, it's so incredible.
it's and I think that's kind of why the soundtracks can kind of exist on their own sometimes, because there seems to be a definitive uh uh range of quality. Like, there seems to be, like, perhaps some would say a higher quality of thought put into the Twilight soundtracks, sure, and maybe they're right. But yeah, even like something like the song Rosalind by Bon Iver, which is, as most people know, is the wow wow, the one that has that like, and you know what I mean by that. But it's that song is everywhere, and I feel like I can't go on the internet without seeing that song or slowed down version of that song. And I think some people don't even realize that it's from a Twilight, like distinctly from a Twilight movie. So it's not
Mhm.
like Supermassive Black Hole where that song existed before
Right.
Twilight. It was made for this movie. Um, and it's so ingrained in like the culture of like the woods and like being in the woods and everything.
Yeah, for sure. The
And it's
entire
weird.
soundtrack to me feels like it feels this kind of heaviness, but almost like a cathartic heaviness, like when you have a
Mm-hmm.
really good cry, and it feels like a rainy day.
Yes,
Anytime it rains outside and I have to drive somewhere, like a long drive, I have the Twilight soundtracks on CD, and I'll just pop in New
of
Moon and be like,
course.
"Let's go. Let's
Oh,
go."
it's perfect. And like, and and I swear, like, I think that a lot of people feel that way. They're like, "Oh man, it's raining. I gotta pop on that old Twilight soundtrack, pop on that old New Moon soundtrack." Because yeah, you're right. There's a heaviness and there's a weight that the soundtrack kind of has, and maybe that is like them doing a really good job at trying to put us in her mindset, in Bella's mindset, um, of this just really like the most depressed you've ever been. And there's something to say about willingly letting in that feeling through music, and that must say something about how good the body of work is on its own.
Mhm. For sure. Also, I just realized it's not in frame, but I am wearing a Twilight shirt. I've been wearing
Oh my
something Twilight
god,
related for, like, pretty much everything, and I am wearing a New Moon shirt. Even
man,
says
I
New
should
Moon
have
on the
worn mine. Oh, we love to see it.
back.
I have to like, I'm gonna be making a TikTok in the future about if they ever repress the soundtracks on vinyl, what they should do and like how they should look and everything like that. And I really hope
They
like
have
in
to with, like they're doing stuff again, like Hot Topic merch and all they have to repress it. I've actually held
everybody's
off.
doing Twilight stuff.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've held off on, like, spending an absorbent amount of money on the vinyls because I have
Hmm.
the hope that they may repress it in the next few years. If they don't in a
Boo,
few
don't
years,
spend the
I'll just bite
money.
the bullet and I'll, like, buy them, but I'm holding out hope that they're gonna do a new pressing because 'cause they've done, like, the
Yeah.
score pretty recently. Like, I have a
Hmm.
pressing of the score, I'm trying to remember where it's from.
Oh, is it the orange one or the red one?
No, it's the red one. I missed the
I
orange
know
one.
what you're talking about. It's the oh my god, it's like a orchestra that does it. And they've
Yeah.
done like,
It's
yeah, yeah,
good.
yeah.
It's a good the vinyl's pressed well. I'm not huge on the art. I don't really get, like, the fang thing because I don't have fangs. But
I saw that too and
it's
I was
still
like,
cute. It's still I mean, I'm just happy that it as long as it plays the score, I don't really care.
sometimes like at this point that's a lot of, that's all people care about. And like, and I was going to say do not spend the money because I'm going to be up Atlantic Records, but because
Please
I
do.
will not let them rest. Because to your exact point, everyone's doing stuff. ColourPop did a collection. So and so's doing this. So and so's doing this. And we're in the middle of like a 15-year anniversary for it. It's the perfect time,
Yes.
and it doesn't make any sense. And that's like a Lego set, for the love of God. Like, it's crazy the things that are coming out for these movies, and they're not doing the one thing that I see in all their Instagram
Everyone
comments.
wants. It's probably just a lot of, like, difficulty with licensing and, like, getting the approval from all the artists,
It
but, like,
has to be.
it just has to be more work now that it's been so long, but I mean, it's so desired and they could make so much money off of it if they just do it, you know?
It would be crazy. And like one of my least favorite things as a vinyl collector is when people do like when a company releases like box sets, but they could 100% release a
I
box
would
set of these
buy it.
soundtracks.
People would buy it, like, that's one of the box sets that people actually, like, want, you know?
Yes,
But
because
yeah,
they never released a
I was
Breaking
like,
Dawn
"You know
one
what?
either.
I'm gonna get this score vinyl," because it was on
Mhm.
sale for, like, $16 or something, and I was like,
Yes.
"Okay, I can do that," and I love a good colored vinyl, you know, like, I love it when they're
Mhm.
colors, because 'cause I'm not a big vinyl collector like you, but I do buy them, especially, like, movie soundtracks, like, I have the soundtrack for, like, House, the Japanese '70s
Oh,
horror movie. I have Coraline, I love
love Coraline.
movie, like, scores and such. I have, like, Baby
Mhm.
Driver, Last Night in Soho, like, stuff like that.
You and I are the same person. This is so crazy.
And so I love when they're, like, a beautiful, like, colored one too, just very
Mhm.
fun. Um, and I noticed I don't know if you saw this, but on the red one, there's a typo, and I put it in the comments, but they didn't say anything, and I think that they had already printed them by the time they started advertising, and so they couldn't do anything, so I
Oh.
think they were like, "Let's just pretend we do not see it."
Oh no.
I know, but it says so one of the songs this is from, Breaking Dawn, it's it's Life, Death, Birth, right? And it says
Okay.
life, death, bird.
Cool. Oh, no, I thought you were gonna say breath or something. Oh, no!
Bird.
Oh,
Yeah. Breath would have been better. Breath would make sense, but it's like no one
I can't
coulda it's not like, oh,
believe.
the T and the H was flipped or like something like someone was typing and they
Right.
it's
Not
like they
even on the
fully got
keyboard
the
would that
name
be a good
wrong.
mistake.
And it's
That's
like, y'all
so
didn't
bad.
no one caught this before y'all hit print?
Because I would
Like
imagine, like, you hand the record to somebody and be like, "Hey, read all of these out loud
yeah.
as someone who's never seen it, and make sure that nothing sounds weird." And if they were like,
Yeah.
"Life, death, bird," someone would have been like, "Hold on. Life, death, what now?" And
Yeah,
then
they must
this would
have
have been able to
thought
be
that
fixed.
they must have not caught it because bird is, like, a real word. So, like, it wasn't highlighted in
Mm,
red or it wasn't you know what I mean? And
that
because
makes
there
sense.
is flightless bird, American mouth, maybe they thought, like, "Oh, it's a reference to that or something." But it's
Oh,
like, y'all can do a Google search. Like, I
a
feel like I would
simple one.
because it's not like there's a lot of words on this thing. It's just the
Mm-mm.
names of songs and the like,
You're
the
right.
yeah, it seems, like, really easy to check. Like, I get if oh, yeah, you read books and, like, there's, like, a comma's in the wrong place or something like that, and you're like, "Okay, it's a
Right.
400-page book, I get it." But this
We
is,
can
like
get over it.
it's, like, less than a paragraph worth of text.
You're absolutely right. And oh my gosh. And they're probably like, you know what, Carter Burtwell might not even care. He might not even see this. But like, I don't know, if that was my
But I
job,
saw
if
it.
I
He may not, but Bi.4.Twi knows. Bi.4.Twi sees all, actually.
and Bi.4.Twi is putting everyone on blast.
I was like, "Maybe they'll correct it, so, like, I won't say anything." I just, like, commented or whatever, but now officially, you guys are on blast. Reprint it and
Oh,
send me
that's
the slip cover.
oh my god, that's so bad. Ugh.
Well, but now it's like a if they do a reprinting corrected, now it's like super rare, misprinted.
Misprint. Yeah. Oh, which is so disgusting, but that's exactly what would have happened.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. They're gonna be like,
which
"It's
just
just
goes to
rare.
show.
It's
Yeah,
rarity." And it's like, "No, it's a misprint. It's spelled wrong,
right.
actually."
Special pressings. Like, no, 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 no. Someone didn't do
Mhm.
their job correctly.
Oh my gosh. So what is your favorite song on the New Moon soundtrack?
Oh man. I'm looking at the track list right now. It's probably, oh God, this is really bad.
Oh, yeah, it's hard.
I have ugh. So fun fact, I'm getting married in Washington, like an hour away from Forks, single-handedly because of this. And a lot of the songs from these soundtracks are in
Yes.
my wedding. The Violet Hour by Seawolf is probably
Oh,
my
I
favorite
love
song.
that song.
Something about and maybe it's one of those like moments before disaster things because it's like right before
Mm,
she like before Jasper loses his shit. But it's just so lovely and if I could pick another one, it's probably also Hearing Damage.
for sure.
Because something about like the very beginning, like the deep, like bassy sounds in
Oh,
that,
yeah.
just like it's so great, and and that like even in the scene that it's in, like there's no dialogue in that scene. It's just the song and like
Yes,
the
for sure.
like even when like he has like a heart attack and everything like that, like there's no dialogue exchange because there really doesn't need to be. Um, and it's just it so encapsulates a mood, and it's just uh I wish I had a whole album of songs just like Hearing Damage.
Definitely, definitely. I think that, like, Violet Hour is probably really, really underrated because of the fact that it isn't as highlighted. Like, it's really in like, it's
hmm
playing very softly in the background of, like, the birthday scene, and so it's like, you kind of have to have watched the movie a lot or have listened to the soundtrack, like, by itself and not, like, skipped over it
Exactly.
to realize just how good it is. Like, it's really good.
You
I
are
think
100%
honestly,
right.
there's so much happening. Like, I think Shoot the Moon is really good too, especially like the end, like
Yes.
guitar and everything. And I think
That
that's another one
guitar
that's
is so good. Oh my god.
yes, and I think that song is really overlooked for the reason that it is actually it's like the opposite reason where yes, it's like the main thing in the scene, but like so much is going on because it's a montage. You know, it's a
Yes.
montage of like Bella and Jake's relationship. And so you're paying attention to all the things happening on screen that you're not realizing, like, "Wait, this song kinda
Actually
slaps."
really good. And I think
Yeah.
you're so right about like maybe a lot of appreciating the soundtrack does come from the people that rewatch this over and over.
Yeah.
Um because yeah, like if you're just watching it in passing, you're kind of like, all right, cool, whatever. But you're watching it again, and you're like, that guitar was really good. I
Like,
When was
"Wait
the
a
last time
minute."
I listened to this whole song? Maybe I need to listen to Band of Skulls, and maybe I need to do this. Like I've
Mhm.
gotten so
Another
much of.
underrated one.
Yes, dude. Oh, and that's I think the very first song.
Yeah, it's
Wait,
super
that's
early.
oh yeah, it's just the or whatever. I can't. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Exactly. But yeah, like even that, like oh, something about that moment because it's like when she's driving her truck and it's overhead and everything. Like even that, you're kind of like, oh my god, we've
Yeah.
grown up a little bit since the last movie. Like this is
Yeah.
like kind of hard. Like it kind of sounds like the vibe that Supermassive Black Hole gives. So you're kind of like, is the whole soundtrack going to be like this? And the answer is yes. The whole
Yes.
soundtrack's going to be amazing.
Yeah, like when Edward in My Friends, when Edward is like it's the slow-mo of him walking up to her in the beginning of New Moon, it's like, "Oh my
Oh,
god."
trying to distract from the car the fact that his car is not silver anymore. I but I
Just
saw it.
ignore that,
I said
ignore that.
they didn't make that car anymore. We can't say anything. But absolutely. Oh yeah, and it's like the jacket's blowing up and her shirt's blowing up and everything.
Yes.
Straight out of
Yes.
a romance novel.
Oh
So
my god.
incredible.
So iconic, and it's like, "Oh my god, they're dating," like, "Oh my god."
It's so true. Like, oh my god, why is that so exactly that? Like, ooh, they're like real boyfriend girlfriend because
Yes.
they've had traumatic moments together. Like,
I think
it's so insane.
so there's actually, like, not a single song on the New Moon soundtrack where I'm like, "This is a skip." I think maybe the only one would be who does, like, the end credit one?
Oh, that's the end credit.
Like, it's, like, one of the last ones on, like, the soundtrack. Because 'cause I'm thinking, like, I don't even listen on I listen on a CD, so it's like, it doesn't tell me who it is.
Oh,
Um,
that's a good point. Is it the oh, no sound but the wind, the help me to carry
yes,
the
that's the only one I
far. Are you
skip
talking about that one?
sometimes. I'm
No,
like,
that's fair.
"Oh."
That one is like every time I get to that song, I'm kind of like, this song feels like it's for the dads. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. Um, but I'm like, this ain't for me.
Yes.
But yeah, that's by editors who I don't listen to.
Sorry to the editors, whoever you may be.
Editors,
Well,
y'all are
apparently they weren't
amazing,
doing
but
their work on the vinyl printing.
what do you mean?
Editors.
Oh my god, the editors, you're so funny. God damn it. I'm so mad that I didn't catch that earlier. Oh man,
It
that
was
was
kind of a
good.
it was a kind of a callback to something we were talking about 10 minutes ago. Um,
In comedy, that's a callback.
that's what we call a callback. Um,
Absolutely
but yeah, I think my favorite
nuts.
I love all of them, like, very intensely, like, I think they're all really good, and so I kinda go back and
Mhm.
forth between, like, what my favorite is, but I think right now my favorite is Slow Life. I just
Slow Life
it
is
just
amazing.
it's so delicate and beautiful, and it has all these moments where it, like, crescendos, it, like, swells, and then it, like, falls back. It's just gorgeous.
You're 100% right. There's a lot of great levels in that song, and it's
Yes.
oh man, like even when like they show her in the water, it's super quiet then, and it I don't know, it feels like you're in like cold water and like things are muffled underwater almost.
Yes.
Um
It's so they
it's
picked the perfect song, like, it's crazy.
Yes, they did, and that was oh my gosh, who was that?
It's,
Oh, Grizzly Bear
Victoria
and
Legrand. Yeah,
say it again?
Victoria Legrand.
That's it. That's it.
Shout out. They definitely
Yeah,
slayed
they
getting
did
to
yeah,
finish
and then like
on
the
that.
ate it up. Yeah, and then there's that moment where it crescendos again when Edward comes into frame and everything, and
Yeah.
like that's a moment that always makes me kind of like grab my chest a little
Mhm.
bit,
And the little
because
twinkling, like, there's, like I don't know what it is, like bells
yes,
or, like, or a triangle or something. I don't know what they use, but
mm-hmm.
it's so good. Oh my gosh, it's so good.
It is one of those songs where I do want like a list of every single instrument that is used because like
Yes.
I'm like leaning into the song like what is that? Is that a bell? Is that a
What is that?
triangle?
What y'all use?
Yeah, it drives me nuts, keeps me awake.
Keeps you awake at night. Maybe you can find a video of, like, them performing it live or something, because then you can
Oh,
see
what I wouldn't give.
maybe. So, final thing, bringing it back to New Moon, now that we're talking about movies going
Mhm,
back in theaters, I saw they did, like they didn't advertise it at all, it came up on, like, my Explore page, like, an ad for it. They did the Twilight movies in, like, select theaters, and I drove this is back when I was in college in Florida, and I drove, like, an hour to the nearest theater doing it so I could see, a double feature of Twilight and New Moon, and
mhm,
seeing seeing New Moon in theaters again was, like, unreal, and especially hearing Damage to Slow Life, like, that whole progression, seeing that in
mhm.
theaters was just like, man, they knew what the fuck they were doing here, and as much
They did.
flack as New Moon got when it came out, which I never got, TBH, I
Mhm.
I'm like, Chris Weitz knew what he was doing, like, this is very
100%.
especially visually, like, you can tell that he was influenced by art, like, by
Yes.
paintings, because it very much reads like that. Like, the entire movie is just, like, stunning. He put a lot of care into you know what I mean? Like, this wasn't just, like, a
Yeah.
paycheck, big box office thing. This was very much like, "I have a specific vision that I am going to
Mhm.
execute here," and the music just, like, icing on the cake. Like it's like quintessential for like I guess a better comparison would more so be like glue in a foundation. It's like you have the foundation, but you
Oh,
gotta like
yeah.
seal these cracks in. And
Mhm.
that's like perfectly what the music does. And it just pays off
Yeah.
so well. Like you have all this build up and then you get these beautiful payoff moments with
Mhm.
like the Victoria Chase scene that it's just like perfect. You're like, why is this like
Yeah.
really good?
And they really stand out to the point where you're just like I think there's really moments where you could kind of like almost take a scene out of that movie and someone would still be like this is a really great scene, it doesn't feel like it's from a Twilight movie or whatever. But like they always kept in mind that these are Twilight movies. So
Yeah,
although
for sure.
you can pause a lot of moments in that movie and it looks like painting quality, like it looks like something inspired by a painting. Um, and then like we still like get these incredible moments that are funny, that are heartbreaking, that are angsty. where it's clear that Chris kept the tone of the movie in mind. Didn't forget who he was making it for, but clearly was like, I respect the people that are going to see this movie. I'm going to make sure that they get something that they want. And it seems like he
Right.
also read the book. Like a lot of people who make book to movie adaptations, I'm like, did you read the book?
Yeah. Did you just go with what the screenwriter said, or like, did you actually
Yeah.
read?
Because like even the moment in the book in like in the movie, what's it's the possibility moment when you're reading the book and you're skipping through like a month of like October, November.
Perfect. Perfect.
Perfect.
It feels
Perfect.
just like that. It's so
It's so empty and
instant
gut
classic.
wrenching. Instant classic, yes. Like and did you ever see the movies? Did you get a chance to see the movies in theaters when they were coming out and everything?
Yes, I saw every one of them in theaters, but um I don't think I saw the first one in theaters. It came out when I was 7, but I saw it on like
Mm-hmm.
DVD. Like my neighbor was like, "You gotta watch this." If I did see in theaters, I don't have like a memory of seeing in theaters. And then the
Got it.
last one, I could not get any. I was not 13 yet, and I could not get anyone to take me.
Oh, that's so
I
awful.
begged, I pleaded, I cried. No one would take me.
Oh, that's horrific. I feel so bad. That's awful.
I'll never forgive my parents or my god sister. They're
And
always on
this
my
is why
shit
they need
list.
this is why they need to re-release them in theaters because I said it before, I'll say it again. I think that because of like the fan base, the quotability of these movies, we could have like a Rocky Horror Picture Show type thing going
Yes.
on with these Twilight movies.
Like
Yes.
every year. It's really funny you say that because my boyfriend, so he went to the college I started out with, but I transferred out of, and I'm so
Hmm.
mad they did this after I left. One of his friends for like it was a fundraiser that she did. Um, where I can't remember what she was fundraising for, but how she did it was like she made a Rocky Horror thing, but for the first Twilight movie. So she was like, she had a whole like shadow cast, and they
Oh
just did the
my
entire
God.
Twilight movie and like sold like little like tickets, like $5 or $10 or whatever,
Hmm.
to like come see it, and all the money went to charity. And I'm like,
That's
you
so
can do this
incredible.
so easily, like especially the first movie because
Yes.
the first movie is so funny and like over the top, like come
A
on.
hundred percent.
Or I
Yeah,
mean,
there's
and Breaking Dawn Part Two is also like
dude,
insanely over
yes.
dramatic.
You could honestly, oh yeah, with the nickname my daughter after the Loch Ness monster, like, dude, come on. Like, yes, and I think that that is something that people are starting to get. I've seen more videos of people doing like Twilight musicals and
Mm-hmm.
like things like that, like small
Burlesque.
stage
I've seen
production.
Burlesque.
Yes. Oh my God, I love them. And like it's so a part of culture now, which I in the moment like when I was like 13, I never thought that that would ever be the case.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so amazing seeing how it is ingrained in culture now and how
Yes.
it's kind of like I tackled this little corner of entertainment that a lot of people forever are going to try to replicate.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like getting people to care about something so stupid and genuinely enjoy it and like get tattoos of it even if it's stupid like there's so many people will die to be able to replicate that and they'll never be able to.
Definitely. And I think that it's really nice to have come around to that from, yeah, they're awful and I hate them, but the soundtracks though. And it's like that's one thing I feel
Hmm.
like we've always had is like you can say what you want about the Twilight Saga, but you can't shit on the soundtracks. We've always got
Dude,
those.
I saw Paramore in concert recently and I knew they were going to do Decode and the moment before the excitement in in that room was unlike anything else. There was a girl in front of me who was like it was like the pre chords of it like implying the song was about to play and she like hit her friend and she's like, are you ready, bitch, we've been waiting our entire lives for this moment. And then they played it and it was they put the words on like we weren't all going to know them. And it was and they showed like parts of the movie and I was like, I can't believe I'm living in a world like this is so amazing.
Unreal. Unreal. That's so good. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for coming on and joining me. It has been an absolute delight. And I have so much good footage I gotta look through.
Yay, I've had such a blast. This is I've been literally looking forward to this like for such a long time. This has been so amazing. Thank
Yes, I'm
you.
of course. This was a joy, and you've got to keep in touch. And I'll actually be doing a second season of this
Oh,
podcast that I'm going to start
sweet.
filming in the fall. So if there's another movie, Eclipse, perhaps, Breaking Dawn, ooh, that might be interesting. Like exploring the lesser, like, because the Breaking Dawn soundtracks are kind of like hit or miss, very like people have
Listen,
mixed opinions. Like,
my controversial opinion is that I think that the New Moon soundtrack and Breaking Dawn Part One are tied.
okay, that's what you've got to come on and talk about
Yeah,
because
I
that is
surely will.
crazy.
Yeah, man, I'm a huge Breaking Dawn. My Twilight tattoo is actually a timestamp in the extended edition of the only time that Edward calls Bella baby in all five movies. If he only does it
That's
once,
everything.
it's when she's fucking dying.
Yeah.
So if you want to look it up, it's when she's
Look, I
dying after
like Breaking
she
Dawn Part One. It's like
love it.
it's it's definitely high. It's like my third favorite Twilight movie, and I
Hmm.
I actually very much do like the soundtrack. Um,
It's
but
good.
to say it's like almost tied, that's so
Now
if
you're
y'all
like,
want to see that discussion, tell us in the comments below. Um, and again, thank you so much. Why don't you tell everyone what your TikTok handle is?
yes, my TikTok handle is infamy monster. So like the word infamy monster. And that's it. And I talk about movie soundtracks and vinyl records, and I do a lot of movies in defense, a lot of videos in the defense of the Twilight soundtracks. So I talk about the movies all the time.
Perfect. So everyone check that out. Um, if you are on YouTube or something with the description, which is where I'm assuming most of you guys are going to be listening to this, please check it out. The link to the TikTok will be in the description. So thank you so much, Beth, for coming on.
No problem.
It was my pleasure, truly.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Bye.
Bye. Have a great day.
You too. All right. So right now I am joined by Sky.
Hi, sorry, my printers decided to wake up in the background. If we want to restart, sorry.
Just it's printing out just like notes upon notes, just a whole binder. You're like, actually, I've prepared everything, which I see you do have notes. Beautiful.
Yes, I was like, I have to print these out because I know I'll forget like half of these points, but I
Mhm.
forget that my printer then sometimes is like, we're also gonna run like 50,000 updates, but hopefully it's done.
Actually, you're not done printing. Did you want 50 copies of this or
It's
all
like
right, so what
decided
are the
to
topics? Because this is new to me. What about New Moon you specifically want to talk about?
oh my gosh. Well, so one of my big reasons I wanted to do this one is I actually used to be a huge hater of New Moon. Uh, so I wanted to talk about that journey of like being like a hater and what changed my opinion about it because I think like some of it has to do with some, you know, background stuff on my relationship with Twilight overall, but then also some of it has to do with the characters in the book versus the movie. Um, and I have a case for the book and I have a case for the movie, and they are different. Because I think that is fair for most of them, if not all of
Yeah,
them.
for
But
sure.
New Moon's my favorite book and movie,
Me
which again
too.
was not the case. I'm very excited that Forever Twilight Festival is New Moon this year. And
Hmm.
it's the
Oh
15-year
yeah.
anniversary of New Moon, everything New Moon. But I also have my like one gripe with it as well. Because
Okay,
I
so
think it's
what do we want
yeah.
to start with the gripe? Actually, let's start in the beginning. Let's start with the hater era. Let's go back. Let's go back in time and start in your hater era.
Hater. Well, so for a very long time, I did not read the books. And I have
Mhm.
told people, and I stand by this, that if you don't read the books and you just watch the movies, you have very different opinions about the entire saga overall.
Definitely.
But especially for me, New Moon, because I felt like when I had just seen the movie, and I watched them every now and then, but I was never like going to all the premieres or anything. In fact, I don't think I even watched all of them until they had all been released. So it
Hmm.
was at least past 2012.
Right.
Um, But when you just watch the movies and you get to New Moon and you've seen the first movie and it's like, it's what it is, and you're like, okay, this is good. And then you get to New Moon and you're like, wow, this is so sad. Like this whole
Hmm.
thing is so sad. And I used to see it as like Edward leaves and then you're waiting the entire movie for them to be reunited. And you're like, we just like skip through all this like sad and just get back to Edward.
You're
I'm
like,
very
forget
much,
Jacob. Ugh.
yeah, I'm like, forget Jacob. I'm like, I don't know. I just want to skip
Well,
to
it's not
where
like we don't know what's coming. Like, sure, when it came
yeah,
out, I'm sure people at the beginning of the book were like, is he coming back? But okay, let's be,
yeah,
we've seen enough books, we've seen enough movies. This is
yeah.
ultimately a romance. He's gonna come back. There's not really any fear that he's not, you know?
It's a continuation of the story. Like we
Right.
all it. But it's that like, and that's my big gripe with it is Jacob. Because I am like, especially in the book, I'm just not a Jacob fan at
In
all.
New
Because
Moon.
in any of them.
Okay, that's interesting because I do not like Jacob, but New Moon as a self-contained, or even just Twilight and New Moon self-contained, I'm Team Jacob. But
Oh,
then you go,
interesting.
but purely for New Moon, purely not even end of New
Mm,
Moon, but like pre-transformation Jacob,
that's fair.
literal sunshine. Literally, she describes him as her own personal son. Like, and
Yeah.
he's so supportive and he's not weird and jealous and like manipulative and stuff, and he's just like this very stable normal presence in Bella's life that I don't feel like she has, but I feel like she needs, and then he goes and fucks it all up by being insane, so
Yeah, I would say that there is like somewhat of specifically to the book, especially because I feel like the movie plays into more of him like trying to hold her hand,
for
trying to
sure,
kiss
for
her.
sure.
Where I'm like, the book's more like he's just trying to
He's
be
just
a
a
good
friend,
friend,
yeah.
but then he's also being like, because he doesn't know, but he's being like secretive because of all the stuff
Hmm.
going on with Sam. And I just think the fact that he like also abandons Bella both
Yeah.
in book and movie after she's been abandoned by the love
Hmm.
of her life. I'm like, did you really have to do that? But
Yeah.
it's definitely not the like I will say New Moon Jacob book and movie is probably the most tolerable
Probably.
pre-transformation.
The Twilight Saga has action, but
Yeah.
it really at its core is just about the characters, and that can be kind of seen as boring. And I think that for a lot of people, that's kind of why it was shit on, is it kind of reaches predominantly like, older women and teen girls. And so anything that appeals to those demographics are going to get shit on in the zeitgeist. But like, I think that that's its strength. And I think that that's where New Moon really thrives. It's like there
Oh yeah.
isn't this big battle, but there's still the threat of Victoria. But it's
Oh
more of
yeah.
like most of it's this kind of implied threat, And
Yeah.
it's New Moon almost to me feels like there's a wavelength going throughout the entire thing
Oh
of
yeah.
like really subtle threat, really like, this vibe of like depression the entire time.
Yeah.
It just has these undercurrents. So instead of being like right in your face, it's just like this impending dread leading up to Edward's attempted suicide.
Roslyn by Bon Iver, like Twilight or not, has been one of my favorite songs ever for at least like 10 years. So that's not even like I'm just in love with that song.
Mm-hmm.
I listen to that song all the time. It's ungodly.
Oh, yeah.
Uh like I think I've did my stats on it because I use Amazon Music. I've listened to it like almost 1,000 times in the last 2 years.
Incredible.
I'm like, yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Because it's like always the vibe. Like,
Oh,
when have
it's
you
such a
never like, I don't want to skip? Like,
yeah,
it's
no,
never a
it's a
skip.
I'm like, don't hate me on this, but I think the New Moon soundtrack is better than the first Twilight movie.
Totally agree. Because there's like,
But
not
yeah.
to call them out specifically, but there's like a few kind of stinkers on the first one. just a few. Overall, it's incredible. But New Moon, I mean, every single song is like a banger, like
It
incredible, like
really is.
forever on a playlist, like
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah. And like there's some songs on the New Moon soundtrack where I'm like, I could live without it.
Hmm.
But I feel like everyone talks about Supermassive Black Hole with the
Hmm.
first movie, and you're like, okay. And
Right.
you talk about Flightless Bird, and you're like, yeah, of course. Like there's those
Hmm.
couple, or like Full Moon at the beginning. You're like, of course
Right.
those are iconic, but a lot of the music's like very quiet in the background, and you're
Hmm.
like, versus New Moon, like Rosalind is like that is what is
Oh yeah.
playing when she's printing out the photos, and Possibility is the focal point of the depression scene.
Right. The music is
Uh,
very pivotal. I mean, like,
yeah.
you know, OK Go's Shoot the Moon is like
Yeah.
the whole montage scene has it over. Hearing
Yep.
Damage, it's like the it's over the entire scene. The music is very important to New Moon. It isn't just like atmospheric background. It's like very, very important. And like Slow
Oh
Life, like
yeah.
following
Oh,
Hearing Damage, Slow Life just
I
like
love that.
boom. There's no dialogue going on there. It is
Yeah.
just the song. Um, and it's so good.
I love, first of all, the extended edition. I highly recommend that over the regular version because there's like 3 extra scenes that make it even more like the book. But like one of my big reasons for loving New Moon the movie is it is the best representation of any of the books, in my opinion.
Agree.
Um, when you're looking at the movies, like, of course, the movie's going to be different from the book. Like, what movie is exactly a book?
Hmm.
None of them are.
None.
But when I read the chapter or like the little section where Bella's depressed, and it's just like October, November, December, January, and then you get the possibility scene, and you're like, yeah,
That's what
that's
it felt
how
like.
that's what it felt like. Like that was it. That was totally it. And all of the flashbacks with Edward, I'm like, that's exactly what happened. That
Hmm.
was the story. And it is mostly Jacob. Like that, whether you like
Right.
it or not, it is mostly Jacob. And I even have the argument that like part of the reason the movie is so good too is they kind of cut down a little bit of the Jacob time, which is
Mhm.
understandable because it's like them doing homework and eating pizza. Like, what are they gonna
Yeah,
do?
it's not very fun to watch.
Yeah, so they do the little montage like sections, and I'm like, you actually get to see Alice pretty
Right.
early compared to when you see her in the book, which is amazing because
Which is always great.
who doesn't love Alice? She's one of the best characters in the whole
Hmm.
series, and like you're just like, oh, okay, like it is the book, and I love the
Right.
book, so I'm like, ooh. And then also just like the cinematography, like the way that they do the depression scene, and they have her in the chair and they have the
Hmm.
camera. And the thing that I point out to everyone that someone pointed out to me is that if you're paying attention when they're doing that like month wrap, you actually see all the photos coming off of
Hmm.
the wall with her friends in it. And I'm like, the little attention to detail is so good.
Chris White
Oh,
deserves 10,000 Oscars, and he
yes.
does not get any of the credit because when this movie came out,
Oh,
people were like, New Moon stinks. And it's like, no, you guys don't understand.
no
Chris
credit.
Weitz was going full like cinematography, like soundtrack, everything. Every part of it was
Yep.
so thought out and it was so
Mhm.
inspired by like all these actual like artistic movements and stuff, like specific shots, color palettes, everything. Like he
Yeah.
was really treating this with artistic integrity. And
Yeah.
then it came out and everyone was like, this is boring. Who cares?
Well, and that's the thing. I think the thing that the extended edition, because I was just trying to think about, what makes that even better for me is like there's 2 parts of the extended edition. They're pretty soon after each other that make it even better and more like the book. And that's the whole sequence with Bella being lost in the woods is much longer, and you get to kind of experience what it's like when she thinks she sees Sam for more than just the 2 seconds. You actually feel like the fear and the
Mhm.
darkness, and you're like, woo. And then in the depression scene, you get more of the song Possibility, and you actually get to see more of Bella in her like comatose state, and I'm like, yeah, like that's what was going on. She just was empty, and you get to see that, and you're like, oh, because like whether you like it or not, new moon is relatable to
Oh, yeah,
anyone. Everyone's been
definitely.
through a hard time in their life, but I'm like,
Hmm.
I relate to that so much.
Right. Yeah, it definitely hits different if you've ever like, if you have depression or if you've ever been in a depressive episode, like it hits different. Or I mean it also, you know, relates I think well to the experience of mourning because even though Edward isn't dead, he does leave and he literally physically takes all like physical evidence of his existence. And so in
Yeah,
a way, and Bella really does not think he's ever coming back. So in a way it is like she lost him, like he
yeah,
died.
yeah.
And so there is that aspect to it where she is in mourning essentially.
I kind of have the same. It's basically what we were just talking about with the grief and how New Moon really is about loss. The book is very relatable, in my opinion,
Mhm.
in terms of grief and loss. It just like, I mean, it kind of punches me in the heart because I've gone through a lot of loss in my life, including with my own sister who loved Twilight. So it feels to me like I'm like not in that same headspace again of like grief, but it feels like comforting to know that like
Cathartic
there's this,
almost.
yeah, like
Yeah.
there's this fictional character who also feels like terrible in this in this state where, because I've been in that place in my life before where I'm like I don't remember just like big chunks of things because
Mhm.
I was going through a hard time and it sucked and it
Definitely.
ended. It ended. I will tell everyone like those bad times do end, thank goodness. But I've been through that where it's like you don't even want to feel at all. And you're
Mhm.
just like, and my sister died in October. And so the fact that the whole depression part is October through January, like
Oh,
extra hits hard.
yeah.
Like, yeah, that's always the worst time of year.
Mhm.
So I think it's very relatable. I think the writing is really good. That's like the first book's good, but I feel like you get a lot of Edward and Bella, which is amazing. And then you're like, oh, and then also they're fighting James, and then it's over.
Right.
New Moon's very like kind of like you were saying with the movie, it flows a lot better because it's
Mhm.
got you also like know what time it is. Like in the weirdest way, you're like, oh, I actually know what time of year it is and like how much
True.
time has
It feels a
passed.
lot
You're
more
like, yeah,
grounded. It's
yeah,
like, okay, I get it. We're in this month, we're in this season. Whereas in the first book, it's like, how long has it been? Like, has
exactly.
it
Well,
been like a week or has it been like a year? Like, what is going on time wise?
that's the first like my big issue with the first movie is the time because you're like,
Mhm.
how long has passed?
Yeah. How long have they been dating? What's going on?
Because it's actually much slower. I mean, it's still fast, but in the
Mhm.
book, at least, it's a little like it's a
Oh,
couple of
yeah.
weeks. You're
Right.
like,
They're flirting
oh,
for a while. They're getting to know each other.
yeah, but it's not all like this happened the next day. You're like,
Right.
oh, that makes a lot more
Next thing you know,
sense.
they're a couple, like snap, we're dating now.
Yeah, exactly. And like the meadow scene doesn't happen like right after or before school. I've never been
Hmm.
able to figure that out in the movie. I'm like, did they just
Yeah.
walk off
I
in the
think
middle
they
of
just skip school, which seems like a bad idea. And I don't know about your high school, but we weren't allowed to just like w- just
Oh
like
no.
walk away. Like
No,
we couldn't
no,
just
there I'm like,
leave
there's
campus.
yard aides at every single corner
Yeah.
being like, why are you leaving?
Yeah. Where are you
Uh,
going?
but
Do you have a
that's the
checkout?
thing. Yeah, like that's the thing though. In the book, it happens on a weekend when they go
Yeah, it happens
hiking.
in a
Like,
car. Well, even the whole
yeah,
say it out loud happens in a car. Like
yeah,
it's a very different, it's also very tonally different. My
yes.
guest and I were talking last night about how it's a little like it's almost a little flirty. Like the I know what you are. It's like, ooh, wait.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I was gonna say you get more of that in New Moon of like Bella is like weirdly really okay with everything being like
Yeah.
total like again, this is still a fictional story, but she's
Hmm.
just like so like, oh yeah, I am the vampire girl, and
Yeah.
I'm saying that to a
Bella's good
bunch
with
of werewolves.
weird.
Yeah,
Like,
and I'm like, all right, but yeah, the book it's relatable. I just think that the writing, especially I'm glad I wrote this down because I would have forgotten. I love at the beginning of New Moon because you get a lot of time in the book actually before Edward does leave. I think you get
Mhm.
to like 90, 95 pages in, so you
Yeah.
get this good chunk. You actually get to hear more about Carlisle's life at the beginning of
Mhm.
New Moon, the book, and you get to get that glimpse in his office and the different artwork and how he came to be and why the vegetarian lifestyle is so important to them, because that's all of them have really ever known, but
Mhm.
that's what Carlisle chose to do.
Right.
And I just think that like little bit of insight is so awesome because you don't ever really get to hear about Carlisle again in that like magnitude. Uh,
Unfortunately.
yeah, it was so important. I'm like, oh, if Stephanie Meyer could just please write an entire side series about Carlisle, that would be fantastic. My other big gripe is like the werewolves are supposed to be like 25, right? They're supposed to do this like crazy aging height transformation. And I'm like,
Oh,
I
I see
know that,
what you mean. Where they're supposed
yeah,
their age is way younger, but because of their insane growth spurt and like everything,
yeah,
they look instantly older. Like
yeah,
boom.
yeah.
Yeah, they
And
should
it,
have done different actors. Like start out with different actors, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa.
yeah, that I'm like that could have been possible, or like why didn't they, because there's movie magic with height. Like you
Yeah,
can make people look taller, and I'm like, could
for
they have
sure.
at least tried to make Taylor
Mhm.
Lautner look tall? Like no offense, Taylor Lautner,
Mhm.
but like couldn't they have like angled it a certain way to make him look
Yeah. Oh,
taller?
definitely.
Because
Because they could have
he's
done
supposed
like
to be huge.
they could have done like like for wide shots, they could have done like perspective shots to make,
Exactly.
like the wolves in the background and then Bella in like the foreground. They could have made them look a lot bigger and vice versa.
Yes.
And then for shots where you're not seeing their feet, just put them on boxes. Like literally just put them on boxes.
Which is so like there's so many scenes. Like the scenes where it's Bella and Jacob's just kind of standing in frame a
Mhm.
lot of the times. I'm like, you could have had him on a box right
Put
there.
Taylor Lautner in stilettos.
Put him
Get
in
this
heels, put him
man.
on a box.
Get
But
this
like
man stilts.
but he's supposed to go through this like crazy growth spurt height wise, and I feel like that was also missing. And I'm like,
Mhm.
he's supposed to be like
He kinda
scary, like
looks the
huge.
same, like, he just kinda looks like he just cut his hair and got suddenly like, "I'm so different, don't look at me." Like, what are you talking about?
Oh my gosh, which I mean, to be fair, like how many times like I did that at 17 where I was like, I'm gonna cut
Oh,
my
yeah.
hair short. I'm
I'm a
gonna be
different
like
person.
I'm so edgy, and I'm like, I was not edgy. I had brown hair. Like, what was
Jacob just
what
discovered MySpace.
oh my gosh. Oh gosh. And then also just like movie wise, like Alice's outfits. I just wanna say, wow. The new moon outfits are just like there are some of them I'm like, they're like
Mhm.
fine. But when it comes to Alice, I'm like, I love everything. I love her blue layered get up. It's like very of its time. It because it's 2009, right? I think everyone forgets that. I'm like, it's 2009. The
Yeah.
style was different.
This was
Everyone
high
wore
fashion for 2009, like, y'all don't look at the red carpet in 2009, it was horrible.
yeah, I'm like, look at the way that they're layering their shirts and look at the way that everyone was wearing
Oh,
three
yeah.
shirts. I'm like, it's
Yeah.
not anyone's fault. That's just what everyone was like. I was an awkward 10 and 11-year-old in 2009. I was wearing cargo shorts and
Skirts
colorful
over jeans. Skirts
yeah,
over jeans. What were we
yeah.
thinking?
Yeah, I was like wearing I'm like wearing like bright pink and blue cargo pants to middle school, and we
Mhm.
traded silly bands like it was currency. Like it's a very different
Oh,
time. No
yeah.
one
I was
had
8 in 2009. Imagine how horrible my fashion was. It's abhorrent. I don't know why my mom let me pick out the outfit and wear it. Like, what is
yeah,
she
yeah,
should have been
yeah,
like, "You're not doing that."
yeah.
Actually,
I mean,
uh-uh.
we were we were shopping at Justice and
Oh,
like
yeah.
maybe we had some stuff from Target. It wasn't the peak Target fashion time,
Mhm.
but we had our TJ Maxx clothes, and
Yeah.
we like I wore a hat like every day for 2 years. I thought it was my thing.
What was with the
But yeah,
hats?
I don't it and I'm not a hat person, so I'm like,
Mm-mm.
I don't know what I was thinking, but like it was of its time. And if you look at especially like the outfit from the scene in Italy, oh my
And people
god.
hate the outfit. I think it slays. It's a slay.
It is so
The
good.
Michael
She's got
Kors coat, like, let's be real, guys. You guys don't understand. This is like a racing, like fancy Italian, like racing inspired,
so
like,
good.
y'all, this is everything.
Well, and it's so fun too because Ashley, they were like trying on all these different pairs of glasses, and she's like, "Oh no, I just have these glasses at home. I think they would work." So she
Mhm.
brought her own pair of
Yeah.
glasses, and that's the ones they ended up using. And I'm like, "Yeah, they slap."
Yeah,
But
and she was right.
the headscarf with the gloves, and the gloves are so intentional too because that way, like she knew, like Aro can read her mind if he touches her hand.
Mhm.
She's got the gloves on, and I'm like, that outfit is so intentional. Like everything
Mhm.
about that is
Right.
so
The headscarf and the gloves too, like, if when she has to roll down the window and stuff to talk to, like,
yep.
the police and everything. Also, she's any sun that's coming in, it's not gonna catch and sparkle her.
I love also the purple dress from the birthday party.
Mhm.
Like I know everyone loves Bella's green dress, and I'm like, that's great. And who doesn't love that? But I'm like, the purple dress that
Yeah.
Alice is wearing is so good. And
Yes,
like,
it's so cute. That
ouch.
ombre Rebecca Taylor, like, it is.
Ooh,
Ooh, it's everything. The little rhinestone,
yeah,
it's so peak
so
2009,
good.
but, like, the good parts of 2009. Like, the
Oh
the
yeah.
fashion moments where we were like, "Maybe we're kind of onto something."
Yeah, where you're like, okay, I like the cut, and she's wearing. I've been looking into the outfits a lot, so I've a lot more knowledge than I did like a month ago. But she's wearing like little heart earrings, and she's wearing her little heart engagement ring, and like
Yes.
it's just so cute. Sorry, one of the dogs is snoring in the background. Very on
I
brand
can't hear it,
Jacob.
it's alright.
But yeah, I just oh god, the outfits that they chose very specifically um for Alice's character in New Moon, I just think are so, and it's so good too with like Alice Green, like or Alice Green. Wow, Ashley Green. Uh Ashley Green too, because I feel like it also just like worked with her frame really, really well. And like
Definitely.
she's the fashion icon of the
Mhm.
series. Like, let's be honest.
Let's do, like, closing statements. Anything that
Okay.
you wanna say, anything maybe you wanna plug, anything at all?
What I'll add, my final thought is I just absolutely adore Alice's vision scene towards the end of New Moon where you get to see Vampire Bella for the first time, and the fact that Edward proposes at the very end of New Moon. I'm like, people forget that.
Yeah.
I love that scene because you're like, ooh.
The end, the movie ending with Bella going,
Oh,
the inhale.
I love that scene. I'm unemployed right now, so if anyone is looking for any information on Twilight, I'm happy to give that away for free. But you can find me on Instagram at Sky in the Sky 98. Pretty easy to remember. And I will be at Forever Twilight Festival this year. So if you're there, come get a bracelet for me. I like to make very funny ones. I had a lot of regurgitate and ravioli ones last year.
Incredible.
I think people really like them, but I also had a lot of like good references. So I'm going to do that again this year. Um,
You're like, "Also, if you have a job, hit me up."
yeah, if you have a job, hit me up. I'm happy to write articles about Twilight. And
A dream.
what I will also add, there's like two things, it's not even related to me. I'm like, if you can, always remember to donate to the Quileute tribe because
Definitely.
they have not been fairly compensated for their contribution to the Twilight Saga. And I will always push that. Always, always, always. I mean, the people there are so fantastic. I've it's been a privilege to be able to get to know some of the
Mhm.
members of the Quileute tribe. So that would be my first thing. And this is just, she didn't even know I'm going to say this, but Cherish Janae, if you guys do not know who Cherish is, she works at the Twilight Museum in Forks and lives there, but she also has fantastic music. And some of it is Twilight inspired, and I love Cherish. So I was like, I'm gonna plug her as well because she's fantastic. And she really is like such an inspiration to so many people. So Cherish, if you hear this, I love you.
Definitely. And I will be linking to Higher Ground to support the tribe. And also, I will link Cherish's music as well in the description. So if you guys are interested in that, please check those out for sure. And it has been such a pleasure having you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for talking about New Moon with me.
So I hope you enjoyed my more chill analysis of New Moon and then my very fun, impassioned conversations. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've made it this far, you're the best. You're incredible. You are why I do this. And please consider, I hate to say this and I hate to be this person, but please consider hitting subscribe. When I reach 1,000 subscribers, I can be in the partner program, and that's always been a dream of mine. So please help that dream come true. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. As always, I'm Bi.4.Twi, and I hope to see you next week. Bye.